Here's something nobody's going to tell you. A man can think you're gorgeous and still forget about you by Thursday. But a man who's psychologically invested, he's lying in bed at 2 a.m. wondering what you're doing. He's bringing you up to his friends for no reason. He's low-key irritated that he can't stop thinking about you when he's supposed to be focused on literally anything else. Because attraction gets you noticed. Psychology gets you remembered. And there's a world of difference between the two. The woman who actually lives in a man's mind isn't doing what Instagram tells you to do. She's not posting thirst traps. She's not playing hard to get. She's not following some weird rule book about waiting 3 days to text back. She figured out something way more important. She knows that a man's emotions don't respond to what you look like. They respond to how you make him feel. And once you become the feeling he's addicted to, you're done competing. You're in a completely different category. So today we're going through 5 psychological turn-ons that hit a man harder than attraction. And I'm warning you now, once you get this, you can't unknow it. You'll start seeing exactly why some women have men obsessed while other women can't get a text back. And it has nothing to do with who's prettier. Society keeps selling women the same tired advice. Look better. Be sweeter. Don't have needs. Don't be complicated. And sure, maybe that works for the first weekend, but then what? When the newness fades, when he's seen you without makeup, when you've both run out of fun date ideas and real life shows up, that's when psychology decides everything. That's when he either stays or starts looking at his phone more than he looks at you. So if you're sick of surface level advice that only works in movies, good. We're going deep. We're talking about the stuff that actually makes a man choose you over and over again, even when shiny new options show up, even when things get boring, even when you're both tired and annoyed and life is just life. This is the stuff that builds obsession, not just interest. 1, the unbothered energy. Men say they want a woman who's into them. And yeah, they do. But what really gets under their skin is a woman who's into them, but also completely fine if it doesn't work out. That's the energy that makes them lose sleep. It's when you like him, you enjoy his company, you're present when you're together, but there's zero desperation coming off you. No neediness, no anxiety, no checking if he's online. You're just solid. And that steadiness does something to a man's brain that's hard to explain. It makes him feel like he's dealing with someone who has options, someone who has a life, someone who isn't sitting around waiting for him to decide if she's worth his time. You've already decided you're worth your own time. And that confidence, that quiet self-assurance, it flips the script entirely. Because here's what happens in his head. Most women he's dealt with have made him the center of their world way too fast. They're available whenever. They're angsting out if he doesn't respond quickly. They're reading into every little thing he does or doesn't do. And at first, maybe that feels good to his ego, but pretty quickly it gets exhausting. It starts feeling like pressure, like he's responsible for someone else's emotional state. And that's when he starts pulling back. But you're different. When he takes 6 hours to text back, you're not spiraling. You were busy anyway. When he's being weird and distant, you're not chasing him down, demanding answers. You just match his energy and keep living your life. When he tries to play it cool, you're cooler. Not because you're playing a game, but because you genuinely have other things going on that matter to you. And that does something wild to him. Suddenly he's the one checking if you texted. He's the one wondering what you're up to. He's the one feeling like maybe he should put in more effort because you're clearly not sitting around waiting for him to get his act together. You've shifted the entire dynamic without saying a word. That's power, real power. The crazy part is, you're not even trying to make him chase you. You're just being someone who knows her worth, someone who likes him but doesn't need him. And that difference, that's what keeps you in his head long after other women have been forgotten. Because you made him work for your attention, not through games, just through having standards and sticking to them. 2, the emotional switch up. Here's something most women don't realize. Men get bored really easily. Not because they're shallow, but because their brains crave stimulation, variety, unpredictability. And the woman who only knows how to be one way, even if that one way is great, eventually Ms. background noise. But the woman who has range, who can be different things at different times, that woman stays interesting forever. This isn't about being fake or playing a character. It's about being fully yourself, which means being complex. Real people aren't one-dimensional. Some days you're in a playful mood and you're teasing him and giving him crap and making him laugh. Other days you're softer, more thoughtful, asking him real questions about his life and actually listening to the answers. Sometimes you're independent and busy and he barely hears from you. Other times you're reaching out first and making plans and showing him you want him around. This back and forth keeps his brain engaged because he never fully knows which version of you he's going to get. And before you say that sounds manipulative, it's not. It's just being human. You're allowed to have different moods, different energies, different needs on different days. The problem is, most women think they have to be consistent to the point and predictable, always available, always sweet, always low maintenance. And that consistency kills attraction dead. But when you give him emotional variety, when you're warm one day and a little distant the next, when you're vulnerable sometimes and challenging other times, his brain can't categorize you. You're not just the nice girl. You're not just the fun girl. You're not just the deep girl. You're all of it, depending on the moment. And that complexity is what creates obsession. Because here's what's happening chemically. Every time you show up differently than he expected, his brain releases a little hit of dopamine. That's the novelty chemical, the excitement chemical. It's what makes new relationships feel so good. But most relationships lose that feeling because people become too predictable. You stop surprising each other. But when you maintain that sense of, I'm never quite sure what I'm going to get with her, you keep that dopamine flowing. And it's not just about keeping him interested. It's about showing him the full picture of who you are. You're not putting on an act. You're just not shrinking yourself into one acceptable version. Some days you need space. Some days you want attention. Some days you're confident and some days you're figuring things out. And instead of hiding the parts of you that don't fit the cool girl image, you just let him see all of it. That realness mixed with unpredictability is what makes you unforgettable. He's not dating a persona. He's dating an actual person. And actual people are interesting. They have layers. They have complexity. They keep you guessing. And once a man gets hooked on that kind of dynamic, flat and predictable feels boring. You've ruined him for simple. 3. The walkaway power. Let's talk about something most women struggle with. Boundaries. Everyone says have them, but nobody talks about what actually makes a boundary work. Because here's the thing, a boundary without follow through is just a suggestion, and men can smell the difference from a mile away. The woman who really affects a man isn't the one who threatens to leave. It's the one who will actually leave, and not in some dramatic blow up his phone, key his car kind of way. Just a calm, clear exit when her standards aren't being met. No second chances for disrespect. No tolerating breadcrumbs. No sticking around hoping he'll change. Just a simple, this isn't working for me, and she's gone. That kind of boundary enforcement hits different because most women, even when they're unhappy, will stick around. They'll complain. They'll try to fix him. They'll give ultimatums they don't follow through on. They'll accept behavior they claim they won't accept. And men learn pretty quick that those boundaries are negotiable, that if they just wait it out or apologize or love bomb for a minute, I'll fold. But you're not most women. When you say something's not okay, you mean it. When you say you're done with the situation, you're actually done. You don't make threats. You don't need to. You just remove yourself from anything that doesn't align with how you expect to be treated. And that quiet strength, that willingness to walk away from something that's not serving you, that's what earns real respect. And respect is everything. A man might mess around with a woman he doesn't respect, but he doesn't commit to her. He doesn't invest in her. He doesn't take her seriously. But a woman who respects herself enough to enforce her boundaries, that's a woman he can't take lightly. That's a woman who makes him think twice before he does something that might push her away. Because here's what he's learning. Access to you isn't guaranteed just because he's interested. Your time, your energy, your presence, those things have value. And if he wants them, he needs to show up correctly. not perfectly, but consistently, with effort, with respect, with intention. And if he can't do that, you're not going to beg him to try harder. You're just going to find someone who can. That mindset shift changes everything. You stop being someone he can take for granted. You stop being someone he can put on the back burner while he figures out his life. You become someone he might lose if he doesn't get it together. And that possibility, that real chance that you'll just walk away, that's what makes him take action. But here's the key. This only works if you're actually willing to walk. If you're just bluffing, if you're secretly hoping he'll change while you keep accepting less than you deserve, he'll feel that, and your boundaries become meaningless. So the real question is, are you ready to choose yourself over a situation that's not working? Because once you are, everything changes. 4, the admiration effect. Here's something men won't usually admit. They're walking around feeling pretty unseen most of the time. Society tells them to be strong, to be providers, to handle everything, to not complain. And they do it. They show up, they work, they fix things, they push through. But nobody's really paying attention to the effort. Nobody's noticing the weight they're carrying. They're just expected to keep going. And then you come along and you see him. Not the version of him he shows everyone else, not the highlight reel, the real him, the guy who's trying, who's dealing with his own doubts, who's actually more sensitive than he lets on, who has dreams he's scared to talk about because people might judge them. You see that guy. And more importantly, you appreciate that guy. When you genuinely acknowledge what a man is doing, when you notice the things he's putting effort into, when you make him feel valued for who he is and not just what he provides, something unlocks in him. His guard drops. He feels safe. He feels seen in a way he probably hasn't felt in years, maybe ever. And it's not about blowing smoke. It's not about fake compliments or manipulating his ego. It's about paying real attention. When he does something thoughtful, you acknowledge it. When he handles a difficult situation well, you tell him you noticed. When he's working towards something, you ask about it and actually care about the answer. You make him feel like his efforts matter, like he matters. Not for what he can do for you, but for who he is. This is where a lot of women miss the mark. They focus so much on what they're not getting from a man that they forget to appreciate what they are getting. They focus on his flaws, his mistakes, the ways he's not measuring up. And yeah, maybe some of that is valid, but if that's all he's hearing, why would he want to be around you? You become another voice telling him he's not enough. But when you become the person who sees his value, who recognizes his efforts, who makes him feel capable and appreciated, you become his safe space. You become the person he wants to impress, the person he wants to be better for. Not because you're demanding it, but because you make him feel like the best version of himself when he's around you. And here's the wild part. This doesn't make you a doormat. You can still have standards. You can still expect respect. You can still walk away if things aren't right. But while you're there, while you're giving it a shot, you're not tearing him down. You're building him up. And men remember women who made them feel like they could conquer the world. Those are the women they don't let go of. 5, the emotional safe zone. Let's be honest about something. The world is exhausting for everyone, but especially for men who've been taught they're not allowed to admit when they're struggling. They're supposed to have it together. Be the rock. Show no weakness. And most of them are walking around with stress and pressure and worries they don't talk about because they don't think anyone wants to hear it. And then there's you. And something about being around you is just easier. He doesn't have to perform. He doesn't have to be on. He doesn't have to prove anything. He can just exist. And that feeling of being able to let his guard down, that's rarer than you think. That's the thing most men are secretly craving and never finding. This isn't about being his therapist. It's not about fixing his problems or managing his emotions for him. It's simpler than that. It's about being someone who doesn't add to his stress, someone who doesn't create drama, someone who communicates clearly instead of expecting him to read your mind, someone who doesn't punish him for having a bad day or needing space. When you can be that person, when you can create an environment where he feels emotionally safe, where he doesn't have to walk on eggshells or wonder if you're mad at him or decode your passive-aggressive comments, you become something invaluable. You become peace. And men will protect peace once they find it. Because here's what most women don't realize. A lot of the women men date are exhausting, not because they're bad people, but because they're insecure or anxious or always needing reassurance or creating problems where there aren't any. And dating becomes this draining thing where he's constantly managing someone else's emotional state. And at a certain point, he just doesn't want to do it anymore. But you're not like that. You're secure enough that you don't need constant validation. You're confident enough that you don't spiral every time he's busy. You're mature enough to have conversations instead of arguments. You say what you mean instead of dropping hints. You don't play mind games. You don't test him. You just show up as a whole person who's handling her own emotional life. And that makes you so different from what he's used to. Being around you is easy. It's light. It's fun. Even when you're dealing with serious things, you handle them in a way that doesn't create unnecessary drama. You pick your battles. You let small stuff go. You don't keep score. You don't bring up past mistakes every time you're upset about something new. This doesn't mean you're a pushover. It doesn't mean you accept D behavior. It means you address issues directly and calmly instead of turning everything into a crisis. And that emotional maturity, that ability to be a soft place to land instead of another source of stress, that's what makes a man think long term. That's what makes him think about building a life with you, because he's imagining the future and he's asking himself, do I want to come home to this person every day? Do I want to navigate life's problems with this person? Do I want this person next to me when things get hard? And if being around you feels like peace, if you make his life better instead of more complicated, the answer is yes, every single time. Okay, let's pull back and look at what's actually happening here, because this isn't just about tactics. There's real science backing up why these things work. When a man experiences physical attraction, his brain releases adrenaline and testosterone. Those chemicals feel good. They create excitement, but they're also short-lived. They fade fast. That's why attraction alone never keeps a relationship going. But when a man experiences emotional connection, his brain releases completely different chemicals. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. These are bonding chemicals, attachment chemicals, the chemicals that create long-term connection. And here's the important part. These chemicals don't just happen because you're pretty or because the sex is good. They happen because of how you make him feel over time. When you're unbothered, you trigger his pursuit instinct. His brain interprets your independence as high value, which releases dopamine. When you have emotional range, you keep triggering novelty responses, which keeps dopamine flowing even after the newness should have worn off. When you enforce boundaries, you trigger respect, which builds oxytocin through trust. When you appreciate him, you trigger serotonin, which makes him feel good about himself when he's with you. When you create emotional safety, you trigger oxytocin again, which is the bonding chemical that makes him attach. So when you do all 5 of these things, you're basically hitting every psychological button his brain has for long-term attachment. You're not just attractive to him, you're chemically important to him. His brain starts associating you with feeling good, with feeling valued, with feeling safe, with feeling excited. And once those associations are locked in, you're not easy to forget. This is why some women can be with a man for years and he never fully commits, while other women meet a man and within months he's talking about the future. It's not about who's prettier. It's about who's triggering the right psychological and chemical responses. It's about who understands that men bond through feeling, not through logic. And once you become the source of those feelings, once his brain chemistry has linked you to all these positive emotional states, you're not just another person he's dating. You're the person. You're the one he compares everyone else to. You're the one he thinks about when he imagines his future. You're the one he doesn't want to lose. That's the difference between attraction and psychology. Attraction makes him look. Psychology makes him stay. Attraction gets you a first date. Psychology gets you a relationship. Attraction makes him interested for a week. Psychology makes him obsessed for years. So here's where we're at. If you've stuck around this long, You now understand something most women never figure out. You understand that you don't have to be perfect to be unforgettable. You don't have to look a certain way or be a certain type. You just have to understand how emotional connection actually works, how male psychology actually works, how to make a man feel things that go way deeper than surface level attraction. You now know that the woman who wins isn't the one trying the hardest to be perfect. It's the one who's secure enough to be real, who's confident enough to have boundaries, who's complex enough to stay interesting, who's aware enough to appreciate what she's got, who's mature enough to create peace instead of problems. And here's the beautiful part. None of this requires you to be someone you're not. It doesn't require you to play games or manipulate or pretend. It just requires you to show up as your best self, to value yourself enough to have standards, to be secure enough to let him see all of you, to be wise enough to appreciate good things when they show up, to be emotionally intelligent enough to create connection instead of drama. When you do that, when you combine all 5 of these psychological turn-ons, you stop being just another option in his life. You become the option, the one he doesn't want to mess up, the one he's actually scared of losing, the one he tells his friends about, the one he can't imagine his life without. And the crazy thing is, this works because it's authentic. You're not manipulating him into feeling this way. You're just creating the conditions where those feelings can develop naturally. You're being the kind of person who's worth being obsessed over, who's worth committing to, who's worth choosing every single day. So stop putting all your energy into looking perfect. Stop trying to be what you think men want based on what magazines tell you. Stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's idea of desirable. Start being the woman who gets it, the woman who understands that real, lasting attraction is built in the mind, not just in the eyes. The woman who knows that how you make a man feel will always matter more than how you look. Because looks fade. Everyone gets older. Everyone has bad days. Everyone looks rough sometimes. But the way you make someone feel, that lasts. That's what builds something real. That's what turns interest into love. That's what makes a man look at you 5 years in and still feel like he won the lottery. And when you become that woman, everything shifts. You're not anxious anymore. You're not wondering if you're enough. You're not comparing yourself to other women. You're not waiting by your phone. You're just living your life knowing that what you bring to the table is valuable, knowing that the right man will recognize it, knowing that you don't have to chase anything that's meant for you.